The Legend of Nessie. Introduction is a Loch Ness monster of myth or a legend. People have described seeing something strange emerging from the dark water of Loch Ness in Scotland. This describes an animal similar to the descriptions of ancient dragons or sea serpents. The monster has a dark body, long neck, sheep-like head, and 2 or more humps on its back. The monster, called Nessie, is named after the loch or lake in which it lives. Strange creatures of the sea are found in many legends, myths, and stories. Scottish myths have been passed down about the water spirit called the Kelpie that looks like a horse when sailors first started sailing beyond the side of the land. They talk about seeing a monster at the sea. Some of those monsters were described as being so large that they could swallow a ship. According to legend, these huge horrible beasts guarded the treasures at the bottom of the sea. Can Nessie be one of the monsters or myths or legend? The loch called Ness. The body of water that is rumored to be home to the legendary Loch Ness monster is large. In fact, it's the largest body of fresh water in the British Isles. Loch Ness was 24 miles long, only 1 mile wide, and over 800 feet deep in some places. It's much deeper than the seas that surrounded the British Isles. Loch Ness was formed during the Fact Ice Age. At the time, the land now called Scotland split in two. The earthquakes made a trench. Then glaciers covered that trench until about 200 years ago. When the ice melted, it filled the trench with water to form a loch. Loch Ness's water is very cold. Peat, a layer of dead plant material, is thick in the water of Loch Ness. The peat allows light to travel only as deep as a few yards. As a result, sunlight can warm the water, making it too cold for people to swim in. As a result, sunlight can warm making it too cold for people to swim in. The top 100 feet warms up to 54 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. The rest stays at 22 degrees Fahrenheit all year round. Because of this, most life is a loch, such as fish and seals, stay close to the surface. Monster sighting. For over 1,400 years, curious people have taken Nessie sighting seriously. Scientists have even used NASA's computers with underwater camera and other equipment to test the loch. But long before this testing began in the 1970s, other curious saw the monster in the loch. The first recorded sighting was in AD 565 by an Irish missionary named Saint Columba. This report says he exited this event to swim across the loch to get a boat. Creature became to the surface, roared, and opened its mouth. Columba commanded it to go back, be quiet, and not touch the man. It did every sighting since then has been quiet and peaceful. People kept Nessie sightings quiet until the 1930s, When cameras became popular, Nessie hunting took off with a flash. People wanted to catch Nessie, at least in a picture. Thousands of people who live in areas have seen statements promising that they've seen the monster. Most sightings have occurs near the Urquhart Castle ruins. The castle ruins are located near the midpoint of the loch, where the water is deepest. Sightings of strange water creatures are not unique to Loch Ness. People have reported seeing similar creatures in the least 265 lakes and rivers around the world. Some people think the creature must be a type of saltwater mammals or fish. Some think the Nessie sightings are a prehistoric reptile that somehow survived over millions of years. They say that when a strange trench was created during the last ice age, a prehistoric beast or group of beasts became landlocked. Fact or fiction? Some accept the report of Nessie as a fact, as believers kite to the similar of the descriptions of Nessie, the numbers of witness report and the possible sonar events. Others think of the report of the legend to keep children away from the deep cold water of the loch. The non-believers kite to the back of a hard scientific evidence that proves Nessie is real. Some people have tried to make the world believe Nessie is real by creating hoaxes. These hoaxes are tricks that keep the legend of the Loch Ness monster alive. A few of the most famous hoaxes are based on photographs. People thought the photo of 3 humps was the real monster. It turned out to be a picture of 3 bales of hay covered in black tar. A famous photograph from 1934 turned out to be a fake sea serpent head attached to a toy submarine. Another hoax in 1934 got people excited when they saw a giant footprint in the mud on the banks of the loch. A man had used a stuffed hippopotamus foot to make the footprint. Scientists got involved despite all the hoaxes. They wanted to learn whether Nessie was real and put an end of the mystery. There was enough consistent events that people couldn't explain. For example, sonar picked up a long object moving 480 feet deep in the loch. That's too deep for most fish. They decided to map the entire loch. In 1987, scientists launched Operation Deep Scan. They used 24 boats to map the bottom and sides of the loch with sonar equipment. Sonar uses sound to identify the shapes of objects. A sound is sent out from the sound bounces back as an echo. Scientists measure the time it takes for the sound to bounce back, which helps them create the picture. A sonar machine used the loch shows objects that can't be seen under the murky water. Some sound from Operation Deep Scan were echoes from the loch's steep sides, but they could not blend at least. When echo from a large and moving object feed down No one knows for sure what the object was. What is a Nessie? Studying the loch has turned up another findings. In 1981, the Loch Ness project found fish called red-billed Arctic char. They had been living at a depth of 700 feet for over 1,200 years since the last ice age. Experts had thought the waters were too cold for life below the few hundred feet. The discovery of a red-billed Arctic char surprised them. Conclusion: maybe the Loch Ness monster will one day lose its legendary status. It might someday be identified as a new species of fish, but for now, Nessie remained a mystery. That mystery might be its greatest appeal. The legend continues to capture people's imagination.